Thank you, Chairman McDermott, Ranking Member Lindner, and other members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to appear before you. Today, as you mentioned, I'm a full professor of economics at the Flint campus of the University of Michigan and currently a visiting scholar on sabbatical from Michigan at the American Enterprise Institute. An issue related to responsible fatherhood programs is the fact that men were disproportionately affected by the last recession, and there was so much economic hardship for men, and those effects were so profoundly significant that the last few years have frequently been referred to by the news media as the man session, as Representative Lindner mentioned in his opening statement. There has probably never been a previous recession in U.S. history where the negative effects of unemployment and job losses fell so disproportionately on one gender. And as one of the first economists to start presenting and documenting the dramatic gender differences in unemployment rates and job losses during the last recession starting in the middle of 2008, my testimony today will provide you with an overview of this historically unprecedented man session. And I'll use some charts that I've included in my written testimony. The first one is this figure 1, which is the unemployment rates monthly from January 2000 to May of 2010. And as you can see here, let's see, I guess that doesn't reach that far with the laser pointer. But you can see that the unemployment rates by gender were pretty close between 2000 and 2007, with some higher unemployment rate for men during the last jobless recovery in 2002. And then starting in 2008, as the recession started to affect the labor market and unemployment rates started to rise in general, this pattern emerged where there was this widening, increasing huge gap between male and female unemployment rates, to the point that by August of 2009, last year, the gap was 2.7%. That's the highest it's ever been in the history of Bureau of Labor Statistics data, at least back to World War II. And that's when male unemployment rate was 11% and female unemployment rates were 8.3%. That's come down now, and the gap right now is 1.7%, which is still historically very high. So there's been some, a little bit of an adjustment recently, but that kind of shows the pattern. Then in the second graph, this is showing now a 40-year history of male versus female unemployment rates going back to 1970. And what's important here is to look at the last 3 recessions prior to the one that just ended probably in 2009, and look at the male-female unemployment rate or jobless rate gap during those last 3 recessions, which were all around 1%. So in 1982, 1991, 92 period, and then in 2001, as a result of the recessions in those periods, male unemployment rates were higher than female unemployment rates, but only by about 1%. And so now what we're experiencing in this last recession was something significantly different and higher. And this is also showing that by October of 2009, the male unemployment rate hit 11.4%, which is the historical high back to World War II for male unemployment, and it was higher than the 11.2% rate that was previously the record back in 1982. Whereas for the female unemployment rate, that hit a high of 8.8% during the last recession, and that was nowhere close to the maximum unemployment rate back to 1982 of 10.4%, or even 9.8% back in 1975. So historically high unemployment rate for men also as a result of this last recession or the man session. Then this next slide shows, of course, that since there was this disparity in unemployment rates, it had to result in disparities in employment losses. And so this is showing employment levels by gender back to January of 2002, and showing that between 2002 and 2007, there was about a 5 million job gain for both males and females. But then when the recession hit, looking at the period from December of 2007 to December of 2009, there was more than 8 million jobs lost, and predominantly male jobs, and so that 68.5%, or almost 6 million of the total jobs lost, were male jobs, and 2.6 million, or about 31%, were female jobs. The last chart shows kind of the explanation behind the man session, and looking at May 2010 unemployment rates, although this would be the case over the last couple years, But the two sectors that got hit the hardest were construction and manufacturing, and those are predominantly male. 87.5% of construction jobs are held by men. And the two sectors that did the best over the last couple years were, the last three sectors were education, healthcare, and government, which are predominantly female jobs. So 74% of jobs in education are held by women, as is the case for healthcare, and even government is 57% female. So the two sectors that are most male-dominated got hit the hardest by the recession, and sectors like education, healthcare, and government actually increased the number of jobs as the economy lost jobs in other sectors. So in conclusion, this man session period was historically unprecedented. It was characterized by the largest gender jobless rate gap in history at 2.7% in favor of women, and with some periods during which men suffered 80% of the job losses. Never before in modern history has an economic recession had such a disproportionately large effect on one sex, in this case men, whose unemployment reached a post-war record high of 11.4% last October. We can expect these profoundly negative effects to continue and create some long-term dislocations and structural changes for men in the labor market, since many job losses in sectors like manufacturing are not going to be reversed. The best hope for an eventual end to the man session will be many consecutive months and quarters of broad-based employment gains in a U.S. economy that experiences sustained real economic growth of 4 to 5%. And finally, to maximize employment opportunities in the future for men, some men are going to have to pursue additional training and education for careers in new fields besides construction and manufacturing. Thank you very much, Chairman.